The story that defined a generation is coming to an end. Stranger Things didn't just dominate streaming. It became streaming. 5 seasons, 8 years. A phenomenon that turned nostalgia into power. But here's the thing about empires. They don't just end, they evolve. And while the Upside Down closes its final portal, the gates of Nevermore creak open. Wednesday Addams steps into the frame. 2 seasons already in motion. Season 3 confirmed before the second even premiered. A spinoff already on the way. Netflix isn't ending a story. It's continuing a legacy. So the question isn't whether Wednesday is the new Stranger Things. It's how the world of Netflix is changing with her. I'm Raphael CG. This is Wednesday Universe. And today we're talking about the end of one era and the rise of another. 2016. Netflix was still figuring out what it wanted to be. House of Cards had legitimized it as a content creator. Orange is the New Black had given it cultural relevance. But Stranger Things made it unstoppable. The Duffer Brothers created something that shouldn't have worked. A show about kids in the 80s fighting interdimensional monsters, wrapped in Spielberg aesthetics and Stephen King storytelling style. And it became the most watched show on the platform, not just in the US, but globally. Why? Because it weaponized nostalgia. Stranger Things wasn't just set in the 80s, it was built from the 80s. Every frame was a reference, every storyline a love letter to the era of VHS and Saturday morning cartoons. It made people feel safe. It reminded them of a time when the world felt simpler, when monsters were just monsters and friendship could save the day. That's comfort horror. Fear wrapped in warmth. Danger surrounded by belonging. And Netflix understood what they had. They turned Stranger Things into a branded universe. Merchandise, partnerships, pop-ups, video games, a stage play. Stranger Things wasn't just a show, it was an IP ecosystem. But here's the thing about nostalgia. It's powerful, but it's specific. By season 4, Stranger Things had completed its arc. The kids had grown up. The 80s nostalgia that once felt groundbreaking had become its signature. The show had achieved what it set out to do. Perfectly. And the audience, the same audience that grew up with Eleven and Mike, they'd grown too. They'd changed. The culture had changed. Stranger Things had defined an era, but the cultural hunger had shifted. Netflix needed a successor, something that could carry the same cultural weight but speak to a different moment. They needed a show that didn't look back. They needed a show that stared directly at the present. They needed Wednesday. Wednesday dropped on Netflix in November 2022. And within 3 weeks, it became the most watched English language series in Netflix history, bigger than Bridgerton, maybe even bigger than Stranger Things. Let that sink in. A show about a goth girl at a supernatural boarding school dethroned the empire. But this wasn't just a win for Netflix. It was the Addams family's biggest comeback yet. A franchise that had lived quietly in the background of pop culture for decades suddenly became relevant again. For nearly 90 years, audiences have known the Addamses, from Charles Addams cartoons in the 1930s to the black and white sitcom of the 60s to the films of the 90s. But never before had they dominated the cultural conversation like this. Wednesday didn't just revive a character, it reintroduced an entire mythology to a new generation. So what changed? Stranger Things built its empire on warmth. Wednesday built hers on distance. Where Stranger Things made you feel, Wednesday makes you think. And in 2022, that's exactly what resonated. Because here's the thing. The audience that loved Stranger Things in 2016 had spent 6 years watching the world grow louder, more performative, more connected, but somehow less sincere. By 2022, nostalgia wasn't enough. People didn't want to escape to the past, they wanted to see themselves in the present. And Wednesday Addams, she speaks directly to that moment. She doesn't perform happiness, she doesn't pretend to care. She looks at a world that demands conformity and says no. And Netflix knew exactly what they had. Before season 2 even aired, they greenlit season 3. They confirmed an Uncle Fester spin-off with Fred Armisen. They started building the Addamsverse as a proprietary franchise. Netflix knew what it had and built around it fast, because Netflix learned something from Stranger Things. And look, if you're still here, you're probably as deep into this as I am. So do me a favor. If this analysis is hitting, just tap that like button. It tells YouTube this isn't just noise. And honestly, it keeps me making these instead of, sleeping. Cool? Cool. So, let's talk business for a second. Streaming is a war. And in 2024, the battlefield is franchise IP. Disney has Marvel and Star Wars. HBO has Game of Thrones and DC. Amazon has Lord of the Rings. Netflix had Stranger Things. And they knew it wouldn't last forever. So they did what every corporation does when their flagship product is aging. They diversified. Wednesday isn't just a show. It's a strategic investment in Netflix's post-Stranger Things future. Season 3 greenlit before Season 2 premieres. Uncle Fester spinoff announced with Fred Armisen. Multiple projects in development. That's not scheduling. That's succession planning. Netflix is building what they're now calling the Addamsverse. And they're doing it while Stranger Things is still on the air, ensuring there's no gap in their cultural dominance. It's brilliant, honestly. ruthless, but brilliant. Stranger Things' ending isn't a loss. It's a planned transition. The Empire transfers power to the successor before the Empire falls. And here's where it gets interesting. Wednesday has advantages Stranger Things never had. Stranger Things was built on a specific era, the 80s. That's its strength, but also its limit. You can't keep doing the 80s forever. Wednesday is timeless. Gothic horror doesn't age. Outsider narratives don't expire. You can tell Wednesday stories forever. That's what Netflix is betting on. Not just a show, not just a character. A mythology they can mine for decades. Welcome to franchise entertainment in the streaming era. This is how empires are maintained. But beyond the corporate strategy, there's something deeper happening here. The shift from Stranger Things to Wednesday isn't just about Netflix, it's about culture. Stranger Things represented optimism through nostalgia, a way of looking backward to feel safe. Wednesday represents irony as armor, individuality as strength, facing forward without blinking. Think about it. Stranger Things is about a group of kids who defeat evil by sticking together. The message is clear. Connection and community protects you. You're stronger together. Wednesday is different. She fights her battles in solitude, but not in isolation. Her strength comes from knowing who she is, yet she isn't untouched by connection. Enid Thing, even those who challenge her, they form threads of loyalty she never fully admits, but never truly rejects either. It's not about being alone, it's about learning when to let people in. It's not that one story is better than the other, they simply reflect different worlds. Wednesday became an icon because she refuses to perform. She doesn't smile when she doesn't mean it. She doesn't soften herself to make others comfortable. She exists on her own terms, but she's not heartless. Her empathy just doesn't look like everyone else's. That's what resonated. That's what went viral. Not just the dance, not just the aesthetic, the honesty. Both series use monsters, but they mean different things. In Stranger Things, the monster is external, the Demogorgon, the Mind Flayer, Vecna. Evil comes from outside and you fight it together. In Wednesday, the monsters are closer to home. Sometimes they're human, sometimes they're reflections of what's inside. Joseph Crackstone, Thornhill in Season 1, Isaac Knight in Season 2. And speaking of Isaac Knight, he's where Wednesday makes one of its most interesting choices. Isaac and Eleven share something on the surface. Both wield telekinetic power, both are shaped by control and trauma. But their roles couldn't be more different. In Stranger Things, that power belongs to the hero, the one who protects others and restores balance. In Wednesday, it belongs to the threat, the one who distorts balance, who turns power into manipulation. That contrast says everything. Power itself isn't good or evil. It's what you do with it. And Wednesday isn't imitating Stranger Things. It's re-examining the myth that power automatically makes someone heroic. Stranger Things says, the world is dangerous, but friendship conquers all. Wednesday says, the world is dangerous because people are dangerous. Stay sharp, but stay human. It's a different worldview, not colder, but more aware. It's the worldview of a generation that grew up seeing complexity everywhere. A generation that knows monsters don't always come from other worlds. And Netflix understood that. So here we are. Stranger Things is ending. Wednesday is rising. And the question we started with, is Wednesday the new Stranger Things? The answer is both yes and no. Yes, in function. Wednesday is Netflix's new flagship, the new cultural tentpole, the new franchise they'll build an empire around. But no in essence. Because Wednesday isn't trying to be Stranger Things. It's trying to be the answer to what comes after Stranger Things. Stranger Things revived the past. Wednesday rewires the present. But here's the real question. Can Wednesday actually replace Stranger Things? Not artistically. We've already established they're fundamentally different. But corporately, strategically, is this really Netflix's plan? To transfer the weight of their entire streaming empire from Hawkins to Nevermore? Because let's be honest, Stranger Things captured a specific cultural moment perfectly. It became bigger than a show, it became a phenomenon. Wednesday has the numbers, it has the viewership records, it has the spin-offs and the Season 3 greenlight. But does it have the same place in pop culture? The same multi-generational appeal? The same ability to bring families together on the couch? What's clear is that Netflix is betting everything on it. They're building the Addams verse the same way they built the Stranger Things universe. Aggressively, strategically, with long-term franchise planning. Whether it works, we'll find out. Season 3 will tell us. But right now, as Hawkins closes its final chapter, Nevermore is all Netflix has. The audience has already voted with their views. The future of Netflix's empire isn't in nostalgia anymore. It's in reinvention. And if you want to go deeper into the Wednesday universe, every mystery, every character, the complete breakdown, that playlist is right there on your screen. There's a lot more to uncover. Click it, and I see you in a few seconds.